Feeling stuck? Yearning for more? You're in the right place. This is Midlife Moxie with Nicole Hate, where you're going to get a weekly dose of courage, clarity, and maybe a little bit of chaos as we navigate our best chapter yet, midlife. Welcome back to Midlife Moxie with Nicole Hate. Last week, we excavated your desires from decades of being buried underneath other people's priorities. Today, we're going to talk about the sacred practice that actually protects those desires, boundaries. And before you roll your eyes thinking this is just another just say no lecture, I can assure you this will not be that. This is about the full body, the full life revolution of teaching the world how to treat you and how you want to be treated. Most of us think that boundaries are just about saying no. But that's like thinking self-care is a glass of wine and a bubble bath. I'm going to take you so much deeper than that. And for most of my life, I did not have boundaries set up. I had a welcome mat where my identity should have been. Everyone was invited to walk all over it. I was working full time. I had a long work commute. I was racing to pick the kids up from after school care when they were younger. I was throwing dinner together before we needed to sprint out the door to go to activities, or I needed to go out and volunteer because I volunteered an awful lot in my past life. PTO positions were falling on me like confetti because apparently I was the only parent with a pulse and a guilt complex. But here's what I didn't understand then. My lack of boundaries wasn't just about saying yes to being on too many committees. It was bleeding out in every direction: emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual. I was a 24/7, all you could take buffet, and everyone had a plate. So let me get crystal fucking clear with you about what boundaries actually are. Because the good woman industrial complex has you thinking that they're just fancy walls. Boundaries are the invisible property lines of your soul, instructions for where you end and others begin, energy management systems for your life, sacred protection of your authentic self, the architecture of healthy relationships. Boundaries are not punishment for others, walls to keep everyone out, selfishness in action, mean girl behavior, abandoning people you love. Think of boundaries like skin. Without skin, us humans would be a walking open wound, vulnerable to every toxin, unable to regulate our temperature, and bleeding out constantly. That's what life looks like without boundaries. It's raw, painful, and unsustainable. So let's go through an inventory of boundaries and allow you to think on maybe where you're bleeding out in your life, where some boundaries need to be firmly set. Think about physical boundaries. Who touches you and how? Or think of your personal space, your body autonomy. Think about maybe the relative who insists on hugging you when you would prefer just a handshake. Or the colleague who stands too close to you. Or the friend who goes through your purse without asking. Emotional boundaries. What feelings you take on versus what belongs to others. Mood swings of your friends, your coworkers, or even family members. They are not your storm to weather. The disappointment of others is not an emergency for you to fix. And their happiness isn't your job to create. Time boundaries. Your hours are not communal property. Your evenings belong to you. Your weekends aren't everyone else's playground. Your lunch break isn't a therapy session for your coworkers. Mental boundaries. Your thoughts and opinions are valid, even if they differ from those around you. You don't need to adopt their beliefs to keep the peace. Your values don't require their approval. Energy boundaries, or protecting your life force from the energy vampires. Limiting yourself exposure to people who drain you. Choosing where to invest your precious resources. Or recognizing when you are running on fumes. Digital boundaries. Maybe this is when you respond to texts, if you respond at all, or what you share online on social media. Who has all access to your digital life? And maybe this is a radical act of you being unreachable. I did not learn boundaries overnight. Unfortunately, I went through a long period of time where I had really no boundaries because my boundary education started with complete depletion. I was working full time. I was on the PTO serving multiple different roles at my kids' elementary school. And yes, I do want to also acknowledge here that my husband, who was my support, and I know that many of you listening to this do not have that luxury, but we did split a lot of duties. So I want to honor, I want to acknowledge, and I want to recognize that there's a privilege that I had that I know some of you don't. But I want to be honest in how I came to the boundary setting, how I came to be to this place today from my past experience. Because even with help, I still felt like I was drowning. Because boundaries aren't always about who's helping you. They're about recognizing that you're allowed to have limits. My moment came when I realized that I just could not continue to give anymore without disappearing entirely. My kids were going to be aging out of the elementary school age, and my escape hatch, it was opening. So I thought to myself, I need to transition out of these PTO roles. But the response, well, it was like I had announced that I was abandoning orphans in winter. There were guilt trips and there were manipulative conversations. People said things like, "Oh, but you're so good at it," which to me really just meant you're so good at sacrificing yourself for our convenience. And that's when I learned people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always resist when you start building them. Let's do some internal work. This will be your boundary detection system. Because before you can set boundaries, you need to recognize when they're needed. Your body knows, and your body has always known. You just haven't been listening. Boundary violation symptoms. It might be a tight feeling in your chest, especially if somebody is asking you for just one more thing. It might be feeling exhausted, that even hours and hours of sleep and naps just are not fixing. You might feel resentment building up inside of you like a volcano. You may even fantasize about running away from it all, or feeling as though you're just performing your life, but really not living it. Or a rage that comes from nowhere. And I can tell you that it's not from nowhere. These are not character flaws. They're alarm bells. Your internal boundary detection system is screaming at you. Breach, breach, breach. So let's build a blueprint for your boundary building. Step 1 is the assessment. Ask yourself and be honest, brutally honest, even when it's uncomfortable. Where are you hemorrhaging right now? Which areas of your life feel like free-for-alls? Who has all access passes to your time, energy, and emotions? Write it down and then face the evidence that you came up with. Step 2 is starting small. Pick one area, one small boundary. Here's some examples. Maybe it's not answering texts after 8 p.m. Maybe it's taking lunch without working away from your desk. Revolutionary, I know. Or maybe it's saying, "Let me check my schedule," instead of saying an instant yes. Step 3, prepare for pushback. Others will test you. They will guilt you. They may rage at you. And all of those are perfectly acceptable and normal because their discomfort with your boundaries is evidence that they needed to exist. And it is not your problem of how other people feel. Next, I'm calling this step 4, the sacred hold. Now, honestly, this is where most of us will crumble. We set the boundary, they push, we cave. But the magic happens in the hold, in staying firm when others will tantrum, in not explaining or justifying or even apologizing for having needs. And step 5, rinse and repeat. Boundaries aren't one and done. They are a daily practice. You'll have times where you'll slip. There may be times where you cave. And sometimes you'll people please your way back into depletion. That's just called being a human. The practice is catching yourself and resetting. So let's talk about what you're really afraid of. Because I know you're thinking it, and maybe you even don't want to think it. But it's connection loss. It's the loss of people who will walk away or unfriend you in real life or even on social media. Because you're thinking, if I set boundaries, people will leave. And they may. But here's the mind fuck. Boundaries don't destroy connection. They create it. Without boundaries, you're not in a relationship with people. You're in transaction. They take, you give. They need, you provide. They demand, you deliver. To me, that isn't connection. That's extraction. Real connection requires two whole people meeting in the middle, not one person bleeding out while the other feeds. Boundaries create the space for actual intimacy, the kind where people love you, not just what you do for them. The people who leave you when you set boundaries, they were never connected to you. They were connected to your services. So let them go find another 24/7 human convenience store. Here's what I have discovered after years of boundary work. The places where I had the weakest boundaries were the places where I was most disconnected from myself. I couldn't protect my time because I didn't believe it mattered. I couldn't guard my energy because I didn't think I deserved to have any. I couldn't maintain emotional boundaries because I'd been trained to be everyone else's emotional support animal. Boundary work is identity work. It's asking, who am I when I'm not serving everyone else? What do I need? What do I want? What's okay with me and what's not? These aren't selfish questions. They're survival questions. So here's a boundary challenge that I invite you to join along in. This entire month of July, we're going to explore boundaries that bite, the kind that protect you and your newfound desires and your excavated self. So your mission is to complete the boundary inventory. Where are you leaking life force? Choose one boundary to implement. Start where it feels manageable, but meaningful. Track the resistance, both internal, as in your guilt, and external, their reactions. And hold the fucking line. When they test you, and they will, don't cave. Document the outcome. What actually happened versus what you feared would happen. Boundaries aren't just about saying no. They're about saying yes to yourself. Yes to your needs. Yes to your limits. Yes to your humanity. You've spent years, maybe even decades, being boundaryless, available, accessible, inexhaustible. And that woman got you here, but she's killing you now. It is time for you to build the sacred architecture that protects your life force. It is time to teach the world that you're a whole person, not just a resource to be mined. Remember, people resist your boundaries because they've gotten too comfortable with your lack of them. Time to make them adjust. You're not mean. You're not selfish. You're just done being consumed. Build boundaries like your life depends on it, because it does. Before you go, I want to make sure that you know how to stay connected to this work, because what we have talked about today, this is just the beginning. If you're sitting there thinking, holy shit, she just described my entire life, and you want to know exactly what patterns are running the show in your life, I've created something specifically for you. You can head on over to my website, www.nicolehate.com, and take the assessment, which sacred pattern is running your midlife. It's a free diagnostic tool that will tell you exactly where you are in your own conditioning and what your next steps should be. There's no fluff, no generic advice, just precise information about your specific patterns. Because here's the thing, you can't interrupt what you can't see. And most women are trying to change their lives without understanding the deeper nervous system conditioning that is actually driving their choices. If you want to dive deeper into these conversations and connect with other women who are also done performing their way through life, you can join my private Facebook group. Link will be in the show notes. And it's where we have conversations, real, raw, unfiltered truth about women in midlife. And if you want to be on my VIP list for weekly doses of truth that maybe help keep you accountable to your own transformation, there is a link in the show notes, but there's also a link at my website, www.nicolehate.com, where you can sign up to be on my email list. This isn't a typical newsletter filled with tips and inspiration, though I do include that from time to time. This is a newsletter where I share hard truths, insights, raw, unfiltered things that are just not socially acceptable on social media. And these awarenesses that you can take away from what I share can be a catalyst for change. So I invite you to sign up. And if you're ready to go even deeper, because you might be tired of all of this surface level work and you really want a whole system level transformation, everything you need to know about working with me is on my website, www.nicolehate.com. I'm not a coach, and this isn't coaching, and it's not therapy, and it's sure as hell not spiritual bypassing. This is a resurrection of the nervous system. And this is for the woman who is ready to stop performing and start living. You can also follow me on Instagram, Threads, and YouTube at I am Nicole Hate, where I share reminders about conditioning and women and midlife, confronting truths, and desires that are just frankly not up for negotiation. So next week, we will continue to have discussions that likely will make some of you squirm. It is what I'm best at. But if this episode shifted something for you, do me a favor and leave a review. Not because I need an ego boost, but because there are women out there who are Googling, why do I feel invisible in my own life at 2 a.m.? And your review might be what helps them find this podcast. Your review could also be the breadcrumb that leads another woman out of performance prison and into her own resurrection. So until next week, remember, you don't need permission to want what you want. You never did. That was just conditioning dressed up as consideration. You're a woman in midlife. You don't need permission. You just need to have desires and wants and the ability to go after all of them. So stop asking and start claiming.